how in a computer network, how do you identify devices? We identify devices using two types of what you say addresses. One is called a physical address, and the other is called a logical address. The MAC address or the of our network interface card is called our physical address, which is actually binded into our network interface cards. And the logical address that we assign to our network interface card is called the IP address. Computers can only understand the language of IP address. Okay, they don't understand any other thing. So even if we can give some name to our system, we can give some name to our phone. But for the computing language or computing terminology, everything is identified using an IP address. So IP address is a short form of Internet Protocol address. It is a unique address assigned to each computing device in the IP network. An IP address consists of 32 bits of information. These bits are divided into four sections referred to as octets or bytes, and the four octets of 8-bit each. So dotted decimal representation is this, binary is this, and hexadecimal is this. Hexadecimal is not relevant here. One important thing is that these dots which we represent over here, they are not relevant for our computers. Okay, our systems are able to read them in 8 bits each. Okay, it is just because we want to represent for humans, that's why we use dots. um, so one thing that you must understand is binary to decimal conversion. So for that I had given you one calculator also. You can also use online calculators that are available right now, but one thing is that you must understand how this is happening. If you don't understand it, then you will become very slow in whatever you are doing. So idea is very simple. We use something called a positional notation. So for a binary number starting from the right hand side, we give the positional notation from 0, 0, 1, 2, and the value and the corresponding value becomes what? So whatever is the binary number value into 2 raised to the power of positional notation. Okay, and you will calculate each of these, and the end result is a series like this, 1, 2, 4, and so on. And so suppose at some point it's 0, so this value will also become 0, and hence your the decimal number will change. So I had also did this. So this is also kind of a calculator. I have already put this is a positional value. We are talking about 8 bits, so the last bit's position value is 7, and the maximum value that can have be, so if you have 1 in the last bit, its corresponding decimal value will be 128. So if all are ones, the maximum value can go up to 255. If all are 0, the minimum value will be 0. So from 0 to 256, every octet can have a range of 256 values. Okay, so this conversion you must understand, uh, because otherwise you will not understand IP addressing. So one thing very important is IP address configuration. So you should be able to configure IP addresses on your Windows machines, on your Linux machines, and so on. On your Linux machines, you have got a command called setup or NMTY setup, which will help you to do this particular part. Normally, we use this command when we are not using the graphical user interface. And as I have explained multiple times, on Linux, on 99% of times, you will not be having the graphical user interface unless you have got Linux installed on your system itself. So in that case, you will use these commands or some commands that we will see in the next lesson of networking, Linux networking, where we will cover all these things. Similarly, assigning IP address to Windows. So if you have got your admin ID, admin password on your machine, you can also go and assign a IP address manually on your Windows machine. Okay, so this is the kind of interface that you will get, and you because see what happens today is you normally don't do these activities, because as soon as you log into your Windows and you connect to your Wi-Fi, you will get this IP address automatically. That is when we no longer need this to be done. Earlier this was very nominal thing for us to do. Okay, so we would do it. If you are a part of a network, in your office network, you might have to do this very regularly. So now understanding more about the IP addresses. So IP addresses are assigned by something called IANA. Okay, this is a organization that effectively manages registries that deal with three categories of internet identifiers: IP addresses, domain name systems, and inter-protocol resources. So all these three things are managed by IANA, Internet Assigned Number Authority. So if we talk of our IPv4, the entire range of IPv4 addresses will be from 0.0.0.0 to 255.255.255.255. Okay, so this is the entire range. IANA also does one thing. From this range, we have extracted some IP address ranges, which we today known as private IP addresses, which are only used in the internal networks of the organization. Remaining IP addresses, so this entire range minus the private IP address pool, uh, becomes your public IP address pool. This public address pool is given to what? IP vendor organizations. So they are IP vendor organizations which just distribute these IP address ranges to different ISPs, internet service providers, or like of Airtel, Geo, etc. So what will happen is that Airtel will go to this IP vendor organization and purchase a pool of IP addresses, public IP addresses we are referring here. And then Airtel, whenever you will take internet from Airtel, they will assign that public IP address to you. Okay. They also use DHCP and related protocols. So so DHCP is kind of a protocol that is used within the LAN, local area networks, uh, for your WAN. Okay, so even your Wi-Fi router at your home is taking an IP address, a public IP address from some kind of a DHCP server running on the Airtel side or Geo side. There we use protocols like triple P and something like that. That the protocol is different, but the method is the same. And why it is used is we want to prevent duplicacy. So if say Airtel has got 1 crore subscriber and Airtel is going to give them IP address manually, a public IP address manually, it will become a nightmare for them. Okay. Okay. On your Windows system, how do you find your machine's IP address first of all? So as I mentioned, that whether you are using a mobile hotspot or you are using your Wi-Fi router, they also have a IP address given to them from the your ISP. So you can just go here and write what is my IP address.com, and this is the public IP address. This is not your private IP address. Okay. For a private IP address, I can simply go to the command prompt. I will just reduce the size. I will write ipconfig. Okay. So we have discussed how do you find your. So you find your public private IP address using ipconfig command, and you can find your public IP addresses using what is my IP address. So this is your typical network. So how public IP addresses are different from private IP addresses. So within your network, this can be your home or my office or your office. Here you can give these ranges. These ranges are reserved ranges. Reserved from whom? For whom? These ranges are reserved for whom? When I say they are reserved, what does that mean?
Reserved for private IP addressing.
Yeah. So these 192 regions are reserved for private IP addressing. So we can give even the same range in both our homes, right? It is not a problem. In
Okay.
fact, if you are using Airtel network, then your IP address range will also be 192.168.1. Because these are private, they are never used on public. These two systems can never reach to each other directly. Okay, so this kind of connection is not there. If I want to reach your system directly, I have to use some kind of third party tool like AnyDesk or Meet or RustDesk. So even in that case, we are not talking to each other directly. Okay, so that is
Okay.
why the main property of IP addresses is that IP addresses have to be unique, because these two boxes can never reach out to each other, this office 1 and office 2, directly. That means that they can have individual same IP addresses for the machines. But when we go to the public, then in public, everything has to be unique because we can reach these IP addresses on the public internet. So your Wi-Fi router or your Wi-Fi router and my Wi-Fi router both will have a IP address which will be unique and which can be accessed through public. Okay. So as I have shown, you can find out your IP address from what is my IP address. Okay. So this is just for information. Again, the same thing explained further. So this is your internet service provider. They are giving you a trunk, as we call it. Uh, Today, you can call it a fiber optic cable that is coming to your Wi-Fi router at your home. There's a public IP over there. And from any other device, I can reach this IP address also. Okay. But when you talk about your private network, it is your private IP. No one from outside can reach your directly to your private IP unless you have So the only way for you to do it is something called NAT, but we are not discussing it here. So I can only reach your public IP, and from there I can reach your network. That is
Mm.
why we always say that this is our gateway. So we'll put our firewall over here. We will configure rules so that people cannot hack into my system and so on. Okay, one more thing is that as we say that conflicts, right? So I cannot have this 192.168.29.147 IP address given to two machines within the same network. This is not possible. But because these two networks are separate, this one is possible. So your machine at your home, your laptop at your home, my laptop at my home can have the same IP address, private IP address, but I cannot have one more laptop at my home which is having the same IP address as of mine. So if this happens, your networks goes into conflict and your network can even go down. Okay, it is such a big error. Types of IP addressing is static. We have seen static is something that you go to your system manually and give it. Dynamic is something that you give dynamically using some protocol. So PPPoE is the protocol that is used by the internet service providers, and DHCP is used internally in our networks. This is the same thing. How do you assign your IP address statically to your system? So you will go to your network manager, network connections. You will open the Ethernet. You will click on the IPv4 settings, and you will get this kind of a box. And you can assign this IP address and DNS server automatically. This thing, and for automatic, you have to set as a obtain the IP address automatically. This is your default configuration. So why do we need automatic IP address assignment? So management of network becomes simple, less chances of errors, more manual work in maintaining IP address for systems, and you can actually end up sharing the IP addresses between the two systems. So that is why we use DHCP. So DHCP works with DORA messages. So as soon as you boot your system, a request is sent in the network. This is a DHCP discover request, and it's a broadcast. So anywhere in the network, it tries to find the DHCP server, and if it is available, it will respond to that request. It will actually offer an IP address to it. As soon as your system will receive the offer, it will accept it, and it will generate a request now. Okay, and the DHCP server will receive this request, and it will give an acknowledgement. What all we can get from the DHCP is IP address, subnet mask, DNS gateway IP, default gateway IP, and so on. So all this information is automatically received by your system, and it is ready to use. There are certain other things that are happening with DHCP. On DHCP server, we can define the pool of IP addresses from which we have to assign the IP address. We can also do MAC address binding. So it means that a particular system in your network will always get the same IP. So that configuration we can do on the DHCP server. On the DHCP server, we can also set the excluded pool. So there are scenarios where I don't want to give my servers dynamic IP addresses. I want to have static IP addresses for my servers so that they do not change. So I can define that, okay, these 10 IP addresses should not be ever assigned to any machine. And those 10 IP addresses I can assign to my servers. There's a lease time. So it is, so their default value I don't remember, but after this lease time, your IP address will renew. That means it can change. Normally, DHCP server will try to give the same IP address, but it can change. So that is why it is also called dynamic. And this is all these things you can configure. Your IP address can change when you reboot. On Windows, if you want to renew your IP address, the command will be ipconfig/release, and on ipconfig/renew. So this will renew your IP addresses. And on Linux, there's a command called dh client that you can run to do the same.